I have a friend of mine, his cohort, they're in Trump's office on a regular basis. They work at very, very high levels of
Mhm.
government. And I start talking about the March primary and oh my gosh, nobody understands it. And he looked at me and he said, "Wait, can I vote in the primary? When is the primary?" And he said, "No offense, Marjorie. Nobody knows about any of this. Like, we don't even know these things are happening." And we're
Mhm.
like, most people learn civics from a
This is
gym
true.
coach after dodgeball.
Yeah.
So this isn't an education gap. This is a societal problem.
Marjorie Clifton is the co-founder of In Good Company Institute, a trusted voice at the intersection of communications, policy, and power. For more than 2 decades, she's advised leaders across 4 presidential administrations, helping global corporations and nonprofits navigate crisis and change, and spent 15 years as a national media commentator, appearing daily on networks like CNN, Fox, NBC, MSNBC, and PBS. And alongside all of that, she's a single mom, which means she understands leadership is not just in boardrooms and briefing rooms, but at the kitchen table, in real life, in the tension between ambition, responsibility, and heart. Today, we're going there, into what it really means to lead with steadiness and integrity in complicated times. Please enjoy my time with Marjorie. Hey, y'all. Let's go there. Okay, so Marjorie Clifton, we've tried to do this for a while.
Yes, I
I'm
know.
so happy that we're doing
Me
this.
too.
It's a bit on the fly.
It's perfect.
Um,
That's the best way.
but I adore you, and I want to talk a little bit about how we met. And I don't know if you remember, it was Austin 100
Was it Austin 100? Okay. I was trying to actually
because we
remember
had
because we have a lot of
multiple.
common, yes,
Yeah,
overlaps and things like that. Yeah.
yeah, between Austin Community Foundation
Mhm.
and Austin
Mhm.
100. No, it was Austin 100. And here's the funny part, and I'm sorry to the person that we were walking with. I don't remember who we were walking with, but somebody was walking with you and invited me to join. And all I remember from that morning is you.
Well, it's because it's someone you already knew well,
Yeah.
Laura Gottesman.
Oh shit. No, no, it wasn't. Was
It
it Laura
was. It
Gottesman?
was Laura.
Laura! I'm so sorry. Are you
Mm,
sure?
yeah. Yeah. I
At
remember we
Austin
left
100?
from her house. She was with us at Austin 100. Oh, you mean
No, not on the
oh, at
walk with Laura
Austin
Gottesman. When we
100.
met at Austin 100.
I feel like it was also Laura. And that we
Really?
scheduled a follow-up walk after.
Oh my gosh, hilarious.
I think I'm
Okay,
almost
Laura,
positive.
fact check
I'm
us.
almost positive. So,
Fact check
yes,
us.
yes.
But I just remember being so impacted and being like, "Holy shit, this woman is a dynamo."
That's crazy.
I was blown away by you. And then over the years, we've just stayed in touch, in particular
Yeah.
around your annual exam.
You can go ahead and tell them. You're not
No, you tell them.
I send Carla selfies from the OBGYN's office in my medical robes, but I try to make them look somewhat sexy in the least sexy situation. And by the way, that's the only you're the only one I share selfies with,
Oh my god.
especially of that nature. And that is I mean, I feel like I make fun of myself more than I do send genuinely. But anyway, yes. So we share a very intimate moment
Oh
every
my
year.
gosh. By the way, they are adorable. Get checked, ladies. They are adorable. And every year I update it as your profile picture in
Oh
my
my
and,
god.
and as for your contact in my phone.
Oh,
They're
wow.
so
Oh,
funny.
boy.
Okay,
Find those on the internet one day, it'll
we
be
just
fun.
set
Yeah.
the tone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm not giving that to you, Ryan. You're not getting those to edit them in.
Yes,
Nice
yes.
try.
Oh my god.
Okay. So we met a few years ago. I've been kind of watching you over the years. How would you describe what it is that you do or who
Hmm.
you are in the world? Let's go even
Who I
broader than that.
am in the world. Gosh, I mean, I'll tell you what I try to be. I mean, it's interesting even hearing you say, like, "I was just so blown away with your dynamo," and I'm like, "No, I'm just me." And, it's interesting. I had dynamo parents, but who didn't really ever talk about us being dynamos in front of us.
Huh.
So we were never given that direct, like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe what you're doing here. It's awesome." Or that feedback. And there was just sort of this, like, I don't know, all of us went on to do very different and probably and amazing things, to be honest, but we didn't get that feedback at home. So I honestly still see myself as this, like, awkward 7th grader who was told, like, "You can't sit at our lunch table," and felt like a total outsider. And so anyway, thank you for saying that, and it's not how I see myself, which is interesting. So how do I see myself? Who am I in the world? Um, what I have come to recognize about me is that, I see possibilities. I look at things from an abundance standpoint, not a scarcity standpoint.
Mhm.
And I'd say that's how I approach friendships, and so it never occurred to me to lock people out. I was always like, "No, they should be part of our group too," and it always confounded me when people cliques confounded me. I've been that way in my career. It's been who can we get at the table? How can we work together? How can we partner? There's a downside to that too, because not everyone's willing to meet you there. And again, it never occurred to me to feel competitive with. It always was like, no, there's so much we need to do. And I felt that way about family too. I've never defined family insularly. I always wanted my grandmother literally ripped down the wall between her living room and dining room in their little house in Texas City, Texas, and bought a dining room table from England that seated 20
Wow.
because she wanted to make sure that everyone was always at the same table, and their house was always the more the merrier, neighbors came, and so every family event was really not just our family, it was all the people she counted family, and I've always and my mother's that way too, tried to emulate that in my life. So, I think I'm a connector. I like to put people together again, and I like to solve problems. I've always been, that helper. If you look at the Enneagram and all those kinds of things, definitely fall into that mentality.
Okay, so I wanna click into something that you said. You said, sometimes there's a downside to that. You were talking
Oh
about
gosh,
in
yeah.
the context of trying to bring people together, and this is something I can identify with. How does that show up for you, or how has that shown up in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I do think also not unique to my family and my genes. Like we are, it's like dive in. We don't spend a lot of time asking about the risk or the downfall. It's like there's a possibility, let's go for it. And that means sometimes you run flat into the wall. It means sometimes that where you want people to work together, where you want something to work, it just can't. It doesn't. And so you get let down a lot,
Mm,
and you learn hard lessons about, the world. I think I very much had this very optimistic, hopeful view of the world in my 20s. I mean, I look at my old journals and things like that, and then you learn that no, there's some people that will let you down.
mm,
There's people who can't meet you there, and there's people who also don't see the world the way you do. So
mhm. What do you do? Can you tell me any stories in terms of recently or just in the past few years? Because our world is so polarized. I imagine you're running into this more and more.
yeah, I mean, I think the gift of the work I'm doing right now is actually finding more ways to more commonalities and more connection, and it really starts with the things we share. So that's good. It doesn't mean though that people are willing to always stay on the journey.
Mhm,
Um, I think the hard part about what I'm running into right now or what I see in the world is that, ego and scarcity still shows up everywhere. Shows up in the nonprofit world from a resource standpoint.
mm,
It shows up even in causes that are good causes. There's people that know I need my name on it or it needs to look like this. And that happens every week, by the
mhm,
way. That's not just like and so, my work has been I'm not gonna judge that person for seeing the world that way or for feeling competitive or for, copying our stuff or whatever they're doing,
mhm,
right? Um, I'm gonna look at it as, "Okay, great. Compliments to the chef. They love what we're doing. They're gonna repeat it," or, "Gosh, it's too bad that they see there's not enough of everything." And we'll shift gears and find somebody who will do it.
yeah.
And the good news is there always is a will. It just is exhausting sometimes, working through that.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about this company that you formed and what y'all are doing specifically.
Well, so it was actually founded by my partner in this business now, Deirdre Walsh. And Deirdre, oh gosh, talk about like also abundance. And this has been the gift of, I would say, even the last year in particular, is I have very much shifted my professional life, my personal life, everything to being about the people I'm surrounded by
Mm.
first.
I can so relate to this. I feel the same exact way. My number one core value is I care about who I work with and for more than the actual work itself.
Because like, we spend more time with these people than we do our families
Exactly.
or
I
our
say the
friends.
same exact thing. I want to come bounding out of bed every morning for the people that I'm working with, and I want to love them.
Yeah, it's yeah, yeah. And well, and I wanna hear more about this in terms of what you hear with other people you talk to as well, because I do find that, there's friends of mine who've been in jobs with they're surrounded by people they hate. They
Yeah.
cannot stand being around. They're miserable every day. And the energy that that takes. And I just feel like the trust it takes to work with people and genuinely operate transparently and honestly, and then allow each other to really like spread your wings, like to not feel like you have to apologize for I'm really good at this or, oh, am I taking too much, of that? So Deirdre, this is a funny story. So Deirdre and I actually went to high school together.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And we encountered each other again since high school, which was, by the way, like an all girls school in Houston, Texas. We were like educated by all these very, actually, it's funny, nuns that were very much ahead of their time.
Huh.
Like the things that we talk about that we were taught at our St. Agnes Academy in Houston, Texas. I mean, she said, Deirdre said, I was taking a class on racial justice and like healing racism in the world in 1990 in Houston,
Super
Texas.
cool.
The most interesting class I remember was a class on death and dying. It was the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Stages of Grief.
Wow.
Yeah, as a 16-year-old.
That sounds like university coursework
It
at like a
was.
liberal arts college.
Yeah,
Wow.
and it was like, talk about things you actually use in the world and draw on and, on world religions and like all kind so it was a really unique and our first class we had to take was speech.
Ugh.
All of us had to
I,
learn to give speeches,
wow.
which, by the way, for me, coming out of middle school where I was just my self-esteem was almost there wasn't any. I mean, that was the hardest thing for me to do was to learn to give a speech and stand in front of people and have them look at me and
And
listen to
Marjorie,
me.
that's what you do now.
Oh, I mean, I joke that they overcorrected, that they by senior year, they're like, "Get the hook, we need her off the" but I mean, they
Wow.
did that. Like, this teacher was like, "You're gonna stand up here and give this speech on sea turtles that you've written until, you can do it without bursting into tears and running out of the room," which is what I would do.
Wow.
And so, okay, I just digress. But so Deirdre and I went to that same high school together, which is an important piece because there is an ethos there of lifting up other women. And
Mm,
it is a very it there is a and there's a value system that we grew up that was very shared.
yeah.
And that I've found, God, that's something you can't wire into someone later or teach later. You either have them or you don't. And
Yeah.
then you operate from that
Well,
place.
talk about trust and a
Yes.
shared experience and shared language.
Yes. And Deirdre's experience was very different at that stage, but I think the thing that she and I, um, have compassion on with each other and an understanding of is what it feels like to be the one that's on the outside. And so this idea of belonging is very central to both of us in
Mm.
our work and in how we approach leaders. And so Deirdre founded this business. She and I reconnected at the time. She was CMO of a large semiconductor company here in Austin,
Mhm.
and I was building a business coalition that was responding to the election law regression that was happening in Texas. They were
Mm,
trying to make voting a lot harder for people.
mhm.
And big corporations like American Airlines and Dell and all these kinds of brands. In fact, I was talking to IBM at the time. We're lining up. We had 50 companies signed on to this letter and this platform. And Deirdre and I encountered each other in that again. And it was interesting because she had just started in her own company a program where she was basically teaching civics to their employees.
No way.
And it had come on the heels of a situation where their CEO had had a moment where post no, 2016 after the election wrote a whole big personal statement about how the company was going to respond to the election of Donald Trump. And I don't think realized at that time. And this is understandable because it's like how we all operate in the world. We live in communities and surround ourselves with people we think all represent the same view.
Right. And this is a large company. I can infer who you're talking about.
Yeah, and the response was not good. It was the national press knocking on her door. It was, employees losing their minds. It became very clear everyone's political differences existed at that time, and she's sitting there going, "What do I do?" And what she realized was when people understand and have information in the same they're getting the same sets of information, a common understanding they learn together, it really changes things. So she started this program that she rolled out over the course of a couple years, and by the end of it, they were best places to work. Their
Wow.
CEO had a 95% approval rating. Any employee that had participated in it had a 98 percentage approval rating of the program. And they were getting global engineers signing up to be part of this American civic education and understanding.
Wow. I mean, I've always said every problem is an opportunity, but that takes it to a whole new
It
level.
and that's what made Deirdre so amazing. So at that time, I was working with a national platform as well with a lot of CEOs who were trying to deal with more from like a how do we create more stability in the political environment? How do I respond to crisis in this
Yeah.
moment? And so I was doing crisis communications
Yeah, I recall.
all the time. George Floyd happened. I mean, it was
Exactly.
like nobody knew how to respond. The Dobbs decision in Texas,
Yeah. The
around the
pandemic,
abortion laws,
everything.
the pandemic, it was exhausting. And so what I started doing is also referring some of these companies out to Deirdre, and through In Good Company, she started rolling these programs out with them. Fast forward to a year ago, and she had taken a hiatus to go work for an AI company. And I was trying to figure out, "Oh my god, I don't think I can do crisis communication all the time.
Mhm.
What's the scale? How
Yeah.
do we solve this for people?"
Yeah. And your poor nervous system.
My nervous system. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the hard part is that I don't care whether you're a therapist, anyone's who's in a situation where you're walking with people when they are in a crisis, it's virtually impossible to not absorb some of that. And I've had to also learn a lot about what that is, what it means to have your nervous system completely online and have it partially offline or completely offline, because a lot of us can function real well in that survival mode. I'd gotten really good at that. So, in the interest of that, in terms of where I wanted to be in my life, in the interest of I want to be working with someone that I trust and I care for, and then also coming from a standpoint of what can I be doing that is proactive, that helps businesses, helps leaders figure out how do we respond to what the world right now?
Yeah.
How do we respond to the disconnect? And as she and I looked at In Good Company, which was this nonprofit and for profit that she had set up for this purpose, I was like, let's do this together. And so she agreed to, she made the transition from the AI company and we rejoined. And honestly, it has been like the most amazing ride just in the last year. And I am so excited to see her, talk to her, and be with her every day. So it's also been a really amazing gift.
That's awesome. And the
Yeah.
success is coming. Y'all are working with some of the biggest brands in the world. I know you can't mention them, but it sounds like you business is coming.
Oh my God. Yeah. It has been, you have these moments in life where when things start clicking, and you sometimes don't even ask questions. You're just like trying to keep up. You're like, all of a sudden, there's people running to the table. And it's one of those moments.
Yeah.
It has been, it's interesting. We actually worked with a group of other women in Austin and across the state in Texas who had been coming from different platforms, one from the faith community, one from a business platform, Texas 2036. And together we were like, we got to do something, just for our communities, for, yes, the employees and businesses, but what are we doing for our communities, especially around this March primary? And the March primary, um, what people don't understand is actually the most important election that happens in Texas. Because since 1998, every one of our statewide legislators or people who run our state, our governor, our comptroller, our AG, our attorney general, um, And 146 of the 150 people who sit in that legislature, they have been decided in the March primary, not the general election.
Which is what percentage of the vote? It's tiny,
Right
right?
now, about 10% of Texans vote in the primary election. So if
Wow.
you think about that, 90% of the population has no voice in who's running our state. And so that is both a troubling statistic, but it also helps me better understand why you hear so much confusion over everything that's happening. Why are we focusing on these weird fringe issues that aren't actually part of most people's daily life? And it's because you have a fringe group of voters who are deciding and who those legislators are accountable to. And so some of it was like, we got to slow this down and explain it to people in language that they understand.
And just to kind of to highlight some of the things that you're saying, Marjorie, I want to make sure I'm understanding this. So what ends up happening is they're spending their time, energy, political campaign dollars targeting the people
Mhm.
that they know will turn out to vote,
You got it.
which is a very small percentage of
Mhm.
the population,
Mhm.
which is highly polarized, kind of
Mhm.
ignited by some of the extreme conversation, but doesn't necessarily represent the masses.
Mhm.
This isn't a partisan conversation. So we're not talking
No,
about Republican, Democrat.
no, sure, on
We're
both
actually
sides of the aisle.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we are just actually saying, are these the lawmakers that truly represent us as a state?
Yeah, and I would say the values that we're coming to it with are we want people to feel like their voice matters. We want people to have the tools to feel like they know how to participate. And that's true for all people. And I'll tell you the story of where this like really hit home for me.
Mm.
I have a friend of mine who is in a very high powered position at a oil and gas company in an energy company in Houston, runs investor relations. His cohort and his group of coworkers, they're in Trump's office on a regular basis. They work at very, very high levels of
Mhm.
government and politics. And we were out with his family on the boat on Lake Travis. And I start talking about the March primary, and oh my gosh, nobody understands it. And he looked at me and he said, "Wait, can I vote in the primary? Wait, when is the primary?" And he said, "No offense, Marjorie, but, like, nobody knows about any of this. Like, we don't even know these things are happening."
Wow.
And I was thinking, "Oh my god, like, he's got, an MBA from an Ivy League school. He's a super smart guy who knows a lot of things, and he doesn't know this." So this isn't an education gap from a who has a master's degree and who has a high school degree. This is a societal problem. And if you think about it, I mean, we actually have on our presentation we give to a lot of companies and associations a picture of a bunch of kids at a playing dodgeball. And we're
Mhm.
like, most people learn civics from like a dodgeball teacher, like after or from a
This is
gym
true.
coach after dodgeball.
Yeah.
And actually, when I think about where our work is grounded, I've kind of reframed it in a very different way because I'll come back to that in a second, but it's about access, and it's about having the compassion instead of being furious why people are saying crazy things or why they're reading stuff on their social media that seems outlandish or why they're all exercised about a certain policy issue or whatever. It's compassion for, of course, they're feeling this way.
Mhm.
And it starts with people don't have good and clear understanding of how the government even works. And the reason for that is that only 4 states in the country even require a year of civics education in school,
Wow.
without testing, by the way.
Wow.
So, and here's another, like, I'm really gonna take it down a rabbit hole. The founding fathers of our country, they actually didn't agree on a lot of different things.
Yeah.
They had very different philosophies.
Yeah.
The one thing they did agree on was that civic education, meaning learning how the government worked, learning how elections and different leaders in our country would impact the laws, was the reason that American schools were set up to begin with. They were founded in that education. We have moved completely away from that.
Yeah.
People do not get any of it now. So we're, of course, flying blind and have no idea what a rider to a bill is or what it means to drop a card in the legislature or what an amicus brief or these things that they talk about in media just so like it's, you know, pass the cheese, like, just the most common language. And the reality about my career journey and part of my own, talk about wake up call. And this is where ego like plays such a role in all this. Like, how as a leader do I need to like check my own ego at the door? That conversation with my friend where it was like, Marjorie, nobody knows what you're talking about, was like, oh God.
Yeah.
And
What have I been working on?
totally, what have I been doing for the last 20 years?
Yeah.
And then the other is, oh my God, I was a media pundit, meaning I was like on every cable news network and every, network news channel every day talking about things that most people just really didn't understand what I was saying. And I had already had that experience of people saying, I don't know, you sounded good, but I don't really know what you're talking about.
Whoa.
And I was like, oh boy, I'm part of the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. The first thing that comes up for me is no taxation without representation. And we're paying tax dollars. And many of us have either opted out advertently or inadvertently.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing, I find to be so important. That's part of why we rushed to put this podcast together and put out there.
Thank you for that.
But well, thank you. But the campaign, I just want to make sure so people can keep an eye out for it. It's called March Matters.
Yep.
And what do you really want people to know and do?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is we've had such amazing response. In literally 3 weeks' time, we have had 300 organizations sign on as partners in our platform.
Wow.
And I'm talking like Chambers of Commerce, Texas Business Roundtable, faith communities, the Interfaith Coalition, YMCAs, the Girl Scouts, like
All
massive
ends of this
statewide
political
networks,
spectrum.
every end of the political spectrum sign on. And what we provide is basically a free toolkit so that organizations can put their own brand on it. They can put their own message on it. They can put their own image on it. And a lot of them are directing directly to our website where we have very simple, here are the 5 steps to vote. And, when people search in Google, how do I vote in Texas? It's funny that's how that's how most of our website traffic is finding us right now. And we just discovered, we're like, just as citizens, we were like, there is nowhere you can go where you can just get all the information in one spot where it's super clear. I mean, and it was like, I know a lot about this stuff and it would take me hours to dig through the web to find my polling location, my registration, my who's on the ballot, all in one spot now. So it's pretty simple. That's the crazy thing.
So
And
I'm going to confess something to you, Marjorie, that
yeah,
I have not said out loud to many people. So I became an American citizen recently. I was a permanent resident in the United States, and a dear friend of mine said, "Hey, we need to do this
oh
together."
wow, yeah.
And so he and I, from a distance, both got our American citizenships at the same time. I have not been able to vote because my registration got kicked back. I am in a crazy loop
Oh
with
no.
my name
Oh.
because it's showing up differently in Social Security than it is on my driver's license, than it is on my passport.
Oh wow.
And so it keeps getting kicked back.
Mm.
And I can't figure out what the issue is or where it is. And I am an educated
Mhm.
person
Oh, I know.
that's been at the C level of a Fortune 50 company. If
Yeah.
my vote is being suppressed by the process,
Mhm.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
So,
It's so
and I say
confusing.
that not to discourage people. I just
No.
say that to say, yes, even people like me need help
Mhm.
understanding, okay, how can I get through this registration
Mhm.
because I want to vote? And then, yes,
Mhm.
what are the next steps?
Yeah. And it's hard, especially for leaders of organizations, because the patience required to
Yeah.
bring people along the journey is really hard. And I think the other is, and I see this especially generationally in the workforce, is like, when we were coming up in the workplace, you got fed a lot of like, okay, we're changing course, we're doing this thing, and
Oh, totally.
nobody was going to provide you the background and why that is.
Yeah,
And
you just did it.
yeah, and I kind of respect about this generation. They're being like, but could you explain to me why?
Yeah.
And at the same time, I also have been in the seat where I'm like, oh, I really don't have time for this. And this is really frustrating. And a lot of what I'm having to learn to do, and I think what we're trying to do in the spirit of our work, is be compassionate and give people information
Yeah.
and have the patience and honestly the lack of ego
Yeah.
to say, I can explain this to you in a way that it makes sense to me, you would understand it. Of course, not having a JD or a law degree, in constitutional law or something, which is like literally how the news presents things most of the
Yeah.
time.
What you're talking about is classic change management.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about
Yep.
it all the time.
Mhm.
You have to establish the case for change.
You got it.
Like, what would make people decide to change? Well,
Mhm.
and I've always been told it has to be like Rome is burning. It has to be like
Right.
urgent,
Yes.
like there has to be a significant case for change. You have to
Mhm.
establish what's in it for them,
Mhm.
what would make them want to do the change.
Yep.
And then you have to communicate the change in terms
Mhm.
of the vision, like what happens when we change, where are we headed?
Yep.
You have to communicate that change in a way that is really easy. Even a child can
Sure.
understand it. It's really important because
Mhm.
everybody's going to have different interpretations. It's not so much an intelligence thing, it's just we just perceive things differently. And then the other thing is just showing people proof points along the way
Yep.
that the change is happening
Yep.
and so that they can feel good about whatever trouble they went through was actually worth the pain to
Mhm.
get to the other side.
Yep.
So really, it's not unlike driving change at a business like what
Yep.
I've done. You're just doing so in a very tough environment,
Mhm.
on a very tough topic.
Yeah, and I will say this, like, it's been interesting because we actually teach, again, we know civics is kind of a bad word. People it sounds also very highfalutin and all that. So what we're framing it as is community work.
Yeah.
If you're living in community, knowing how you get a policy change to get the roads improved, knowing how taxes are going to work in a business environment, all those things, they're part of both your business function and they're part of, the ways you might engage in the community, volunteering, et
Yeah.
cetera, right? So that's part of how we approach it from a language standpoint and learning standpoint. The other is the skills it takes to understand or engage in civic life, let's say, are the same as being a good business leader. And what's so unique about business environments is they don't really care what your political views are, your background, your anything. You're given a problem to solve with a group of people that may be completely different from you. And so a lot of what we're also trying to help with is be able to bridge what we see as things that are getting in the way of teams doing that well. And so giving people a common language, a common understanding, a common set of information,
Yeah.
and then tools to be able to respect and understand why they may arrive at different conclusions, why they may arrive at a different vote, but at the same time, feel empowered, like they've got the tools. And
Yeah.
social media, everything that we're given right now
Yeah.
to engage or understand politics is toxic.
I agree. And one other thing that I think is important when you bring these groups of people together, whether it's in a business setting for change or if we're trying to do so more on a global level or a country level or a state level, is shared success.
Yeah.
I feel really strongly that we all just want the same things.
Oh,
We all want to
yeah.
thrive. We all want the health of our children. We all want love. We all want a healthy environment.
Yep.
We all want economic success. We all want to age with grace.
Mhm.
And if we could just fucking focus on the
Mhm.
things, pardon my French,
Yeah.
focus on the things that matter most to us instead of argue about the bullshit stuff that is being served up to us in social media to polarize us.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, by other countries,
Yeah.
not
Oh,
even by us.
yeah.
I just think what could we achieve?
Well, it's interesting. I've heard Brene Brown talk a lot about that people can't survive on hate,
Yeah.
on things that are a negative, fear-based leadership, and it has a shelf life. And so giving people both information and empowerment and optimism and something they feel like they know how to engage with. And I do see people gravitating towards that. I think everyone, regardless of what you're getting fed on your social media and what your political views are that reflect that, I think people all universally have a sense of like, this doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good to be angry or to hate other people or
Yeah.
and so I think what we're trying to offer is an alternative, and I think companies are getting that. This stuff is getting in the way of their doing their jobs. And the other thing that's really hard for a lot of people to understand is people's employers are now some of the only places they see and are with other people in person. So less than 17% of Americans right now belong to any kind of community organization, gym,
Faith
fitness group,
based.
faith-based, you got it.
Wow.
And so what happens is
Work
you've
is
got
community.
people That's their community. The other thing, and you especially coming from your background, and Deirdre and I coming from communications and marketing backgrounds, is brand.
Mm.
Is that, interestingly, the most trusted institution in people's lives right now are their employers. The Edelman Trust Index talks a lot about this. Not media, not where I used to be hanging out,
Yeah.
not government, not all these other institutions, but their employer. And the other crazy thing is like 7 out of 10 employees want their employer to teach them these things. So
Wow.
we already know the need is there, and it is like, so how do I create the urgency?
Yeah.
And that's been interesting because this primary moment actually has been that.
Yeah.
So we've been having over the last 3 weeks some of the most interesting and amazing conversations with huge brands who are like, "How soon can we can start doing this with you? And how do we do it year round, not just
So
around this
so
election?"
how do these brands what makes these brands wanna do this sort of work? Because what I also saw out there, Marjorie, was post Black Lives
Mhm.
Matter, post the pandemic, post, all the crises that we saw
Yeah,
over the last 5 years, I saw fatigue from
sure.
CEOs
Yeah.
where they were like, "I don't wanna have to weigh in on everything that's happening
Yeah.
constantly." So how do you get companies to care about this, or why do they care? What makes them care?
Well, what they care about is what you were just saying, which is we feel like we are damned if we do, damned if we don't,
Mm,
in terms of having to make a comment on every little political thing of the day.
yeah,
They feel like we have got a culture problem in our company because people do not necessarily see the world the same way. There's just general tension. And I think this
yeah,
is true everywhere,
I
not just
agree.
at work, in families and all this. We know that the political environment, and again, this polarization isn't doing great things for our business environment either.
Mm,
The instability, and I can share this with you if you want to share it with your listeners, but there is a very direct correlation between GDP and how companies are performing and the stability of their political environment.
oh, I can see that.
And right now, the instability, meaning, we're not running things the way we used to. Our relationship in the world is different than it used to be. All these changes, regardless of whether you think they're good or bad, create instability in the markets. They create instabilities in business. And that is bad for business,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So they're seeing that. And I think what has been so inspiring and so hopeful to me is the diversity of industries that are working with us. I mean, literally everything from the engineers, oil and gas, bankers, you know, you name it, tech, every industry. Interestingly, and this was not something we actually thought would go the way it did, but we invited community groups in as well. And so we have every faith denomination ranging from the Buddhists, the Mormons, the
I
Catholics,
love that.
the Jewish faith, everyone also using the same toolkit. And then all these other community groups like the YMCA and the Girl Scouts.
I love it.
And so there is politically so much unity in this celebration around giving people a sense of understanding and giving them an opportunity to participate. And that is like great news for all of us.
That gives me a ton of hope, Marjorie. Okay, so what's the website in case people want to educate
Yes.
themselves on March?
Okay. So March is marchmatters.org,
Okay.
and that's just for the Texas primary.
Okay.
We are right now about to stand up everyelectionmatters.org. So we
Okay.
have March Matters and
Okay.
everyelectionmatters.org.
Great.
And our nonprofit that we run this through is called In Good Company,
Okay.
and it's
Great.
igcinstitute.org.
Okay. Well, when you launch Every Election Matters, make
Mhm.
sure you let me know, and
I
we'll
will.
push it out to
Yeah.
our listeners as well. Okay. So I'm listening to you, and I'm like, oh my God, we are so similar, and I'm so curious as to what created this drive
Mm.
in Marjorie to make you want to leave the world a better place. And you said something, and I'm wondering if this is it. You just earlier when you were talking about your story, you were like, in junior high was so hard.
Mhm.
Can we go there? Can we talk about
Oh,
like
yeah.
what were the formative experiences that made you care so much about making an impact and leaving the world better?
Yeah. For sure, having the experience of being the one on the outside, you know, I did have like even earlier than that, a moment where I was put in this new school. It was early junior high too. Man, junior high kind of messes us all up, doesn't it?
Mhm.
There was a pair of socks I saw the other day that said, "I'm still recovering from middle school." I was I was gonna give them to my daughter. Um, where I had seen this giant girl at the time pick up this little boy at school and just beat him to a pulp right in front of me. It was the most violent and crazy thing I'd ever seen at that age, and I was so rattled by it. And I thought, "Gosh, how can anyone be so cruel to another person that they know or that they encounter?" And, I think I've always had, a it was funny. I took the label is of "You're overly sensitive" so horribly until honestly about a year ago. And the
Mm.
truth is, I am. When I see something like that, it affects me. When I watched the Redfin commercials at the Super Bowl, I was absolutely crying. And, I think it's a balance of how do you hold that compassion and empathy, and then how do you appropriately have it show up in different spaces. And I think in some ways it can be a superpower to have empathy,
Oh, for
deep
sure.
empathy. And so I've always had that ingrained in me. I, have always tried to look for the people who feel outside and bring them to the table. I remember there was an old woman that lived in my neighborhood growing up, and I was always thinking, gosh, it must be really lonely when you lose your spouse and you're in a house all by yourself. And Mrs. Boswell was her name. So I started riding my bike over to Miss Boswell's house,
Mm.
and I would go visit her, probably once a week. And then we started making cookies together. And then we had our weekly visit. And then I realized, man, I am getting so much from this, having this other caring adult in my life. And um, so I guess I've always it was like everywhere I went, looked for Miss Boswells and people like that that I could, um, connect with. So that's probably DNA. Part of it is my mother, who very much is like that and pushed me into really uncomfortable spaces at a very young age. So she had me working in a AIDS hospice, HIV AIDS hospice when I was 13 or 14 years old.
Wow. Go mom.
Yeah.
That took a lot of courage.
Well, and this is like both the plight and also the benefit of the oldest child syndrome where you're just like,
Oldest
I'm
child,
not even
oldest daughter.
yeah. Oh, it's totally yeah, we need t-shirts.
Yeah.
I saw someone walking around the lake wearing an oldest daughter t-shirt the other day. But yeah, so I was and I think some of it too is, I've been told I have big shoulders, but I probably shouldn't carry so much.
Mm.
And I think that's true. It's like that whole adage around, God only gives you what you can handle. And sometimes I would say, I wish I couldn't handle so much. But I was put in a lot of different situations that were very foreign to my understanding of the world at that time. And each one of those, there was a period of time where we worked at a refugee clinic going as a kid, also in my high school years. And my mom would we would make 400 sandwiches or somewhere between 2 and 400 sandwiches every morning while we were making our lunches for school. And they were dropped off at the refugee house for the workers in the morning. And then I would see and hear their stories. And so, each of those different things, they stay with you. And so you walk into situations and when you see faces and you see people, you see them very differently when you can associate an experience with them. And it's really what I carry in my work, like to go and sit in with the Girl Scouts and then to go sit with the Oil and Gas Association. And like you really do learn to shed any, preconceptions or, you hear somebody say something about, I don't know, the Scouts even or become political. And it's like you shed those things because you know who they really are outside of those things, those affiliations or those labels. So I had parents that pushed me that way, and then I naturally gravitated towards it.
God, I've failed my children. I'm listening to you and I'm like, I've failed my children. Is it too late for me to reinforce more of this with them? You and I share some of this in terms of the experiences that we had when we were little, but I want to go back to something which you said, you said you felt like you were always on the outside. Was that the language that you used, or a kind of an outsider?
Well, I knew what it felt to be on the inside and on the outside.
Okay, that's what I wanna ask
Yeah.
about, because the people that are watching this on YouTube or on video, they're like, "Okay, wait a minute. This woman is a gorgeous bombshell redhead with these beautiful eyes and this beautiful face, and she's an actress. How could she have ever felt that way?"
Oh my gosh. Again, I still see the 7th graders, so thank you. But, most of my childhood, my elementary years were spent in Richmond, Virginia, which, for me and my family, we lived around families that looked like us. We lived in this, like, neighborhood where people didn't lock their doors. It was a very charmed early days experience. And in that time, I very much belonged. I had 3 best friends who we all got along like siblings and that we loved each other like siblings, and, it was just a very, like, safe, amazing relationship set. And I remember Richmond was very segregated, and it was really interesting because at that time, the governor couldn't get into the Richmond Country Club because they wouldn't allow a black man, Governor Wilder, to go to the Richmond Country Club, and some of these things started to creep into my consciousness and awareness at that time. And my parents were very aware of that too, had an opportunity to go back to Houston, which, is if people don't know, Houston is the most diverse city in the entire country. It has the second largest Vietnamese population in the country. It's very international. And so they also felt that it was important for their kids to be exposed to more of the world, of what the world actually looks like. And so that was a huge shift, and there it was, yeah, you don't always, everyone does not look like you, you don't necessarily belong, and, you could look at this, like, I think especially for white people moving through the world, you're used to, in a lot of situations, being the majority, or you're used to feeling comfortable in any room. It is a really powerful and important experience to not be comfortable in the room, to not
Absolutely.
be the majority, and so I think a lot of that transition was really important,
Yeah,
and so I knew that what the 2 things were.
yeah. And then what about you as a woman? Because I also admire the fact that you are so balanced in your femininity and your masculinity. Like you're very feminine, but you're very strong.
Mhm.
Where did that come from?
It's funny, my dad jokes, he's like, again, overcorrected, he refers to my sister and I as his little flowers, He's like, "Not really."
There's the southern.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that's my mother. I mean, it's funny, I had 2 grandmothers who were very smart,
Hmm.
but had very different lives than me, and I was very close to both of them. And my grandmother, who I just lost last year at almost 103 years old, I asked her one time, I said, "Nanny, if you could do anything differently, what would you have done?" She said, "I would have loved to go to college." And honestly, it had never even occurred to, I mean, like she said, "I just don't feel that smart when I'm sitting at tables. So I don't have a lot I could feel like I can say." And, like, she's one of the smartest women I've ever known, and my other grandmother the same way. Her option was to be a teacher and get married,
Yeah.
and my grandmother came from a very poor family and worked in a restaurant until she was sent to work at a restaurant when she was 13 years old, and, helped support her family. So but at the same time, they didn't have the ability to have their own bank accounts, and, their life, their structure was very much around their stability, the marriage and the family and that, and so, I didn't really have models for how to go through life. I just had, some of this is, like, generationally when I was coming out in the world, and also, I very much had a mother who asked for forgiveness, not for permission. And my father very much, like, celebrated her strength and
That's
independence,
awesome.
and so that is then what I think created that path for me.
Yeah. How has this informed how you're raising your daughter, Grace?
Oh, I mean, drilling the same ethos into her, I think. I think that what's really unique about our generation of women is the freedoms that we've been given in our careers, in our finances, in our, um choices around how we want our lives to look and how they, um, yeah, and how we show up in the world. And I do understand arguments that are had for the importance of family. And so it's interesting to sit in those debates over, and I do understand also that we have upended society as it was into a new space that really isn't tenable for most women.
Yeah.
I mean, it isn't for me some days. Like being the kind of mother I want to be and the kind of professional I want to be, those fly in each other's face a lot of days. And
Say
so
more of that. Where's the tension?
the tension is just the time, the
Yeah.
flexibility.
Yeah.
I want to show my daughter that she's a priority. I need to be able to drop anything and everything to show up for her if there's you know, something that is important, a moment that's important. I mean, I have a 13-year-old, so for 13-year-olds, when they start talking, man, you drop everything because that window
Yeah.
closes
That's your
fast.
moment.
It's like, yeah.
How do you talk to Grace about what you do? Does she understand what you do?
Yeah, it's interesting. It kinda comes up organically a lot of times when we're listening to the news.
Uh-huh.
And or in even I find it, like, in situations where she's struggling in relationship, and I'll talk about looking at things from different perspectives
Mm.
and learning about people's different perspectives, and I'll talk about the teaching aspect of what I do. And it is funny, I have had moments where I thought, "She has no idea what I'm doing, she's not really paying attention to what I'm doing, she really doesn't care about what I'm doing." And then what I see is I hear back from school, and what they describe in terms of the role she's taking on at school is like a little Marjorie, mini Marjorie.
Uh-uh.
And it's kinda wild,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
So they're wonderful mirrors sometimes of your best and worst qualities, and it is interesting because she does absorb it even if she doesn't give any energy to it when I talk to her about it.
Oh, that's so funny. I recently learned that my daughter is the person that everybody goes to for advice,
Yes.
which I was like, huh, that's fascinating.
Well, I had to stop Grace because she one day said, "Well, I was gonna provide therapy to one of my class," and I was like, "No, no, 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 we are not providing therapy to anyone,
Yeah.
and that is definitely not what I do."
Yeah.
I joke about being an unlicensed therapist sometimes in business settings where you find yourself mediating or whatever, but, that's always the caveat, not
So
licensed, yeah.
totally. Amen. Ditto.
Yeah.
Um,
So being able to do that and still keep my commitment, still show up fully at work, still be able to be present to that. And, my youngest brother, I'm the oldest of 5. My youngest brother and his wife have a very modern he's 8 years younger than I am, 7 years younger than I am. So, he was yet another generation, right? And I mean, his wife is an oncologist who's incredibly successful. He's the CEO of a company. They have 4 kids.
wow.
And I watch them and I'm like, okay, I both admire the hell out of them and I'm so jealous sometimes.
What makes you jealous?
Uh, that they have a pretty dialed in partnership. I
Mm.
mean, they really do equitably share responsibilities around meal planning, organizing childcare. I mean, they also aren't afraid to like get help. But they also have a really unique situation in that they have, her parents live around the block. They both, have basically effectively retired to be on call to help with their kids. So they've built like a network. Honestly, the way traditional families worked,
Yeah.
so it's kind of an
They replicated
interesting
it.
thing. Yeah, they replicated it and they did it beautifully.
Yeah.
That's not how my life worked out, but it's like amazing for them and they've got incredible kids and I'm really like I'm very proud of both of them.
Yeah. How did your life work out?
It's part of that being the oldest child, the great experiment that we are. Nothing according to plan, and then at the same time, everything better than I could have planned it,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
was saying to you before we started taping that that's one of the things I admire about you
Hmm.
is how bold you are, not just in your professional life, but in your personal life, and how much you're willing to risk for what you feel you deserve and
Mm.
what you feel Grace deserves.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe it's not even as much deserve as it is, um, I feel there's so much I wanna be able to do in the world. I remember it was a priest actually who was a friend of our family, and I was going through an incredibly difficult time trying to make an incredibly difficult relationship decision. And I remember he said to me, I believe our God's a happy God,
Mm.
and he wants us to be happy and productive people. And if your life is not life-giving in that way, then I think it's okay that you do what you gotta do to make that happen.
Ooh.
And that was the most freeing. And the other was, I think this lesson around, you know, in I kinda joke about, like, I call it I had my first boss, who's an amazing woman, Jelaine Levi Garza, and she used to say, "Well, not everybody's gonna dig your chili." And I was like, "Oh, I love that line. Everybody's got a different way they like their chili." And I'm like, "That's
Yeah.
totally it. My branded chili may not be yours and vice versa." And this same priest said to me, he said, "I have a brother who, is a pretty linear person. He doesn't need to talk about his feelings. He doesn't need to dive into all these different things. He's got a very orderly life and all that." And his wife, his now ex-wife, was not like that at all.
Mm,
And they just could not make that rhythm work. And he said they ended up divorcing, and I'm still very close to my sister-in-law,
mm.
and he found a woman just like him, and they are happy, and their life works really well. He's like, "Just sometimes what we need is very different than, another person." And that's true in professional relationships, that's true in friendships,
Yeah.
that's true in marriages, it's true in everything. And I think accepting that fact, I think what I have been guilty of is feeling like, and this is an ego thing, like, I can fix this or I can make this situation what I want it to be.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I am not that all powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, and
And
it's disempowering to the person that you're
of
with as
course it
well.
is.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
And so that was my arrogance, that was my ego, that was also maybe my fear
Mm.
of there won't be anyone or there won't be the right situation, um, that matches all of that. And I feel like I have that in my business partner right now in ways I have never had with anyone. Our skills are so different. Our
Yeah.
gifts are so different, but our values are the same. And we respect the hell out of each other and we love on each other and we make each other better.
So, as someone who's walked away from relationships, marriages, jobs, in service of something, I don't know, in service of your life,
Mhm.
if that's the language we want to use, um, what advice would you give to someone who's wrestling, who's having that heart mind wrestle right now, battle royale,
Mhm.
whether it's about their job, whether it's about their relationship? What would you
Mhm.
say to them when they're in that fear moment?
I think your gut always tells you. I've been very guilty of not listening to my gut,
Mm,
acting, making choices, business choices, personal choices, whatever it is, based on fear, letting fear be the driver.
mm,
And I think sometimes fear being the hindrance to the decision you need to make, or fear being the driver to the decision you make, is a real bad thing.
mm.
And I very, very strongly believe that the worst emotions in humans come from a place of fear
Yeah,
and, like, hatred. I mean, I think a lot of, like, racism, all these different isms
yeah,
are largely about, I am afraid of, I am fearful of being excluded,
yeah,
and I am fearful of scarcity.
yeah,
And so that comes back to that seeing with abundance instead of scarcity. And I think the other is, you have to be willing to be really honest about, am I okay figuring it out? Am I okay standing alone? Meaning I may not have a job in that moment, or I may not have a relationship in that moment. Can I be okay? And I think until you can truly honestly answer that question as yes, it's very hard to make any decision otherwise.
yeah. Will you indulge me for a second?
Mhm,
I have a theory on fear.
mhm.
It's something I've uncovered working with people these last few years. And so if you'll indulge me and if you'll share with me a fear that you have, it can be big or small.
Dying alone.
Okay. What's the grammatical opposite of that?
Living in community.
That's what you want.
Mhm.
So fear is nothing but a want in disguise.
100%, yeah, that makes sense. Wow, yeah.
If you
Yeah.
flip it to the opposite, it's just pointing you to what you want.
That's right.
And I think sometimes people avoid fear
Mhm.
because they don't wanna feel it. Like, I was called a fearless leader and always took that as a compliment. I don't know that
Mm.
that's a compliment looking back at it,
Mhm.
because what I was actually doing, Marjorie, is I was pushing away my own wants and needs
Mm.
because I thought that was the right thing to do,
Yeah. Oh, that's been my formula too.
right? But until lately,
Yeah. Oh, not
and
anymore.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my hack. If you flip it
Mm.
to its opposite, it's actually all it's doing is just telling you what you want.
Yeah.
It's just trying to protect you from what you
We
don't
don't
want,
want.
is another
Yeah.
way to say it.
No, that makes a ton of sense.
But if you embrace the fear and listen to it and be like, "Wait, what is this actually telling me?" And
Mm.
you flip it to the opposite, it will give you insight into what you actually want. And then you can focus on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's a lot easier to say, "Oh, I want to live in community."
Mhm.
And guess what? When you say that out loud, your chances of actually getting it are that much higher.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's a great way to see it.
Okay, you said earlier that life has brought you things that are even more beautiful than you possibly could have imagined.
Mhm.
What's beautiful in your life now
Oh
that
my
you couldn't have
gosh.
imagined?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my daughter is one of them. I had a very, very long journey with, infertility, which was unimaginable to someone who comes from breeders. I'm like, that was never the problem of anyone I was surrounded by. It was always a fear of getting pregnant too many times, not, um, as one of 5, my mother's one of 5, my grandmother's one of 14,
Oh
it was
my
like that,
goodness.
right?
Yeah.
So this was just unimaginable. It was like, "What?" Um, and I always knew I wanted to be a parent, and then, I mean, I really do feel like God gave me the child I was meant to raise,
Yeah.
so that's been amazing.
And you adopted,
I
for those that don't
did. I
know. Yeah.
adopted my daughter, and it was interesting because she arrived right as I had had a miscarriage.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was like 2 weeks later, I got the call, and
Whoa.
it was just perfection. And it was, yeah, it was everything it was supposed to be. And it is funny because we were at the gym the other day and my parents go to the same gym. We have like our little thing. And someone went up to my mother and goes, I mean, it's amazing. The older she gets, she looks just like her mother more and more and more. They just look totally the same. And she didn't even know Grace was adopted. So it was really funny because she has started to like, in a
Look
set,
like you.
look like me and her, mannerisms and all that. And so it's
Oh,
really kind of amazing. And adoption's beautiful,
yeah.
hard, but beautiful.
Yeah. And what is your hope and wish for the world, Marjorie?
My hope is healing and my hope is understanding.
Yeah.
I think that the United States is not unique in this period that we're going through of feeling disconnected from one another. I mean, as much as I love the things that technology has added to our life, I really detest the important things it's taken away.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've figured out how to live with it yet.
Yeah.
So I think that it is dividing us more than it is helping us at this point. And and I think that in some ways it has exposed us to and created pathways to other parts of the world. So the ad of technology. And then the downside is, it's easier to demonize each other.
Yeah.
So I think there's a universal loss
Yeah.
that people are feeling around connection. And I think, and that is what I want healed.
Yeah. Where there's dark, there's light.
Hmm.
If anybody wants their algorithm fixed on social media, give me a shout. I will send you all the memes,
Oh, I'm excited.
and
Yes.
we will get you laughing and inspired
Oh
and hopeful
my
again.
God. Yes. No, no, no.
Uh,
There's so much, like, again, this window has been just so hopeful.
yeah.
I mean, the rooms I sit in every day that are, when I was working in DC, I worked across 4 administrations,
Yeah.
4 very different administrations. So it was Bush, Obama, Biden, Trump. And, you know, people are people.
Yeah.
And I think that where I have found hope is leaning into compassion where I find difficulty at times. Um, Holding loss as what's really at the core of that loss, right? So the loss being maybe connection, the loss maybe understanding, but really trying to not demonize, really trying to have compassion for why people believe things the way they believe them, and having compassion for people because, like, even as parents, right, we're raising kids in a totally new domain
Yeah.
with these phones.
Yeah.
And your daughter really was in that generation where we handed them a phone, we didn't really understand
Exactly.
exactly what
Because
was
it was
gonna happen.
unfolding in real time. Yeah.
100%. I'm now raising Grace with 10 years of data.
Yeah.
And that's a so you it's all these different we're all just we're doing the best we can,
Yeah.
and you have to believe that about everybody,
Yeah.
and we all have different capacity.
Yeah. It's so true. Well, Marjorie, I want to say something to you. I don't know if you get thanked very often, but I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. The world needs you right now. Our state needs you right now. People need you right now. And so I'm grateful that people like you exist in the world. It gives me so much hope.
Mm. Well, and I also want to acknowledge that I would not be able to be having the successes we're having without Deirdre
Mm.
and without in Texas, Meryl and Renee, who've been part of this work. So this is not I get the privilege of being the one out in front a lot of times but none of these things, and this is true for every business, none of these things happen in isolation.
Yeah.
And there's no one of us that can do all of it. It's really again, appreciating and leveraging our different skills together, and that's where we see success.
Well, maybe we can have y'all all back on after March to see
That
how it
would be
went,
so
and we'll get
fun.
an update.
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Marjorie.
Thank you.
This was awesome. Thank y'all for listening today. If you're so inclined, please follow, subscribe, download, share, all of the things so that we can keep going. We appreciate your support so much. If you're interested in learning more, go to thecoeffect.co.